We're going to win those midterms.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne with you on this Tuesday, heading into week 6 of college football season. Had a great show lined up today. Jimmy Hodge on with us up in Knoxville. Connor O'Gara, Saturday down south, will be on with us from Orlando, where they have had a hell of a week and been thinking about y'all at the state of Florida. That was about as powerful a hurricane as I think the South has seen in a month of Sundays. We'll also be joining the second segment. Doug Dean, AU Dothan, Birmingham. Frank Duffy, Mr. LSU Tiger from Atlanta. Top of the second hour, Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia. Their last couple of weekends have been sort of tough. Luckily, they got a 26-23 win this past Saturday on the road in Columbia against Missouri. And do they have just what the doctor ordered? A struggling Auburn Tiger team to renew the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Auburn, 29.5-point underdog. Everybody's been asking me, when was the last time that happened? And I said, I think it was on February 30th. I don't think it's ever happened. But segment 4, Rodney Orr, Tider Insider checks in with us. Alabama gets ready. Not a lot of talk about it yet, but we're going to talk about it today. Texas A&M and Jimbo, the NIL battle is going to be in Tuscaloosa Saturday. Give us a follow on Twitter at @sidelines_live. Follow us. We'll follow you. Be glad to do it. We're here every Monday through Saturday, 2 hours a day. Check us out on www.sidelines.live. If you miss us, 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta, Kicks 96.3 in Alexander City, Lake Martin, Radio, Alabama. Glad to be on there. And Connor, again, hope you're doing well. Again, it's been a wild week for you. We're glad that you're able to join us. And if there's any word that you want to get out about people, how they can send support or whatever to people in Florida, we all love that state. We've grown up in it, going to the beach and all over it. And feel free to do that. And then we'll talk some college football. But thank you so much for taking time to join us this morning.
Yeah, appreciate that and appreciate the kind words. It was an eventful week down here in Orlando, and for anybody living in the Sunshine State, I mean, it just felt like the Hurricane Ian was in everybody's path seemingly, and that's pretty rare. But yeah, donate to the Red Cross if you have the means to be able to do so. But yeah, fortunately in our neck of the woods here, we were able to escape any loss of power, any sort of flooding, any home damage or anything like that. So we were extremely fortunate. But yeah, some of the images that came out from the week it was kind of crazy to see and to process, because we've experienced hurricanes here. But yeah, it was a very powerful storm that had a very unique path.
Yeah, it did. And I think that's why I was in Walmart getting something early this morning. They have a thing where you can donate to the Red Cross. So that makes it very simple. Thanks for letting us know about that. That all makes sense now. Connor, you have a great grasp of what's going on in the big picture of college football, located in Orlando, but again, you see a lot. Let's start with the play this past weekend specifically. And I've been really high on Georgia, and we'll talk to Jordan Hill about it later. But, you're looking at it, from your view, 2 weeks in a row. Did we read too much into the Kent State game? Because they went on the road and had to really play a full 60 to get that W in Columbia.
I was surprised to see that Georgia came out the way that it did. I thought, okay, this is Kirby Smart. The week of practice is probably not going to be a whole lot of fun if you're a Georgia Bulldog, and they're going to come out ready to go on the road against an inferior Missouri team who looked pretty lost offensively in that game against Auburn, a game that nobody wanted to win. And so I assumed, okay,
help me.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, it was really bad. I assume Georgia's going to come out, be able to control the tempo offensively. We're going to see a little bit more of the defense that we saw frustrate South Carolina. And instead, credit Mizzou, because I thought Mizzou did a lot of things very, very well. They've improved a lot defensively with Blake Baker. That gets lost in the shuffle of that game, wherein Mizzou had a very favorable lead, had a chance to make it a 3-score game. If Cody Schrader is able to have that one extra yard instead of getting tracked down by Malachi Starks, who knows how we're talking about this football game, as Jordan Rogers diagnosed in the broadcast. That was the difference in that one. But, Georgia was put in a spot where it had to rally back. I mean, down 10 points in the fourth quarter is no picnic. And Georgia had a lot of self-induced errors. They need their receivers back healthy. Without A.D. Mitchell, they don't have necessarily the right guys to be able to get the outside passing game going. As great as those tight ends are, they can't do everything. So I kind of looked at this game and thought, wow, this was telling, because 2 weeks in a row is not an accident. I think it's just more of what we were talking about in the preseason. Georgia's going to have a ways to go to show that it can get on that level that last year's team was. And this team is different, obviously. And it doesn't mean that they can't win a national championship. I still think they're one of 3 teams in college football that can do so. It just means they have a little bit of a tougher road to be able to get there. And they're going to have to grind through some of these games in a way that they didn't last year.
Yeah. You're speaking of the 3 teams that you think are capable of winning the national championship. Is Clemson one of those?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not. And look, I've been impressed so far with what they've done. I think they've played with fire a little bit from a defensive standpoint. I still think they got a little ways to go. I think, again, some of these better offenses, they're going to be in some trouble. I do. And when they can't necessarily get home with that really solid, rock solid defensive line that they have, I think they're going to be in a little bit of trouble. And we saw Wake Forest able to kind of exploit that. Sam Hartman is so good against pressure. And when he's able to kind of get going, you feel like, all right, this is a Clemson defense that has some issues. And I'll give DJ Uyunglele some credit, because he's been better than what I thought he was going to be this year. I thought some of the preseason Heisman odds with him were just ludicrous. I had no idea why a guy who wasn't in the top 100 nationally in quarterback rating was a preseason top 4, top 5 Heisman guy in terms of the odds. But he has shown that he has made those next steps, and good for him, because that's a kid that could have easily just kind of folded it in and said, all right, Cade Klubnik's going to come in. He's going to be the guy. And we don't really have much of a prayer, but they have shown that they are at least going to be in the discussion, and they could absolutely be earning a playoff spot this year. I still think they have some tough games moving forward. We'll kind of wait and see how they navigate that schedule. But so far, so good from Clemson after they had to replace both coordinators, and Dabo was facing a very critical juncture for his time as a head coach.
Yeah. Another one real quick that I want to go to. Jimmy has a question for you. Texas A&M, we saw what they were really against App State. Nothing's really changed. The quarterback issues haunt them. They go on the road. Mississippi State gets the 42-24 win. Where does Mississippi State go from here, and where does A&M go?
Mississippi State is just going to be a really difficult team to play for 60 minutes. I truly think that. I've been saying that for a while, and I kind of regret not having Mississippi State ahead of A&M in my preseason. I had them finishing with the same record, both overall 8-4 and in conference play at 4-4. But I actually in the preseason had A&M going into that game in Starkville and winning. But going into that last week, it was not a surprise at all that Mississippi State did what it did. They've had one bad quarter of football. That's it. They had the one bad quarter against LSU. Outside of that, I've been really impressed with what Zach Arnett has done with the 3-3-5 defense. If you don't know the name Jet Johnson, if you don't know the name Emmanuel Forbes, you absolutely should. Will Rogers is playing at the level he was at in November of last year, and they really have a lot of pass catchers that they trust. They ran the ball for 144 yards even, too. I mean, this is Mike Leach that we're talking about, and they're able to do all those different things. And I've been really impressed with what we've seen. They still have some weaknesses. They still have those question marks at tackle, but I do like what Mississippi State's been able to put together. They're a difficult football team. They have a nice future. A&M, on the other hand, they're going to be wishing that people are making 8-4 jokes, because it's bad, and I don't really see a whole lot of areas in which it can get better, especially without Anaya Smith, their best receiver, who's out for the year with the broken leg. So A&M might have some tough days ahead beginning this week with Alabama.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I was looking back over just to remind myself. A lot of people will say Jimbo didn't do anything at Florida State except for the 2 years with Jameis Winston. That's not true. He was 83-23 at Florida State as a head coach. Overall, he's 120-39. I mean, that's a 75%. That's a winning percentage. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, I guess – I think he's a good coach. I think he's a good quarterback coach, but he is kind of hard-headed. When he thinks someone's his guy, he wants to prove it until we've seen other coaches like that. Gus Malzahn comes to mind as well. But Jimmy Hodge, you got questions. Connor's only got limited time this morning. He's got to get off at 20 after, so let's go.
Well, I don't especially have questions. I just wanted to have Connor just react to a couple of my observations. As far as I'm concerned, the ACC just looks really weak, um, and I'm just kind of disappointed with a couple of teams now. The job that Clawson has done at Wake Forest is absolutely remarkable, and it tells you how times can change, and if you get the right guy in at a school, um, we now are talking about Wake Forest as an elite ACC team just routinely. It's like we expect it now just because of what he's done or with his, offensive coaching genius and the quarterback play that he's able to get. And, we just look at teams right now that we obviously thought had some potential, but Miami, we all know, is 2 or 3 years away. I mean, their offensive line play just isn't good. And it just shows you that how important that is, because with decent offensive line play last year, Van Dyke had a big year, but right now they just don't they just don't have the weapons, and he doesn't have time to throw the ball. And I think Clemson is going to take advantage of the fact that the league is weak, and they're going to be in a great position to win the playoff. Get to the playoff, but their personnel from top to bottom just isn't anywhere close to what it was as recently as 3 or 4 years ago. So I think the ACC is maybe looking at a long road. And yeah, Texas A&M. Again, their quarterback play, even with a quarterback, and I felt that all along Max Johnson should be the guy, because although he's obviously not spectacular, he's not going to get you beat. And as we saw the Saturday night, you still got Haynes King throwing off his back foot and throwing 4 feet behind his receiver on a 15-yard out pattern, and it's a pick six, and there you go. They are in all kinds of trouble. As a matter of fact, with what's remaining on that schedule, making a bowl game might even be a stretch.
Yeah, I agree.
So they are in big trouble, So again, and you're right. I mean, with Anaya Smith being out for the season, the only offensive weapon they have is Devin A-Chain, and everybody's going to be keying on him as far as Georgia goes. I think you're finding that a lot of defensive coordinators studying those tapes are focusing on where Brock Bowers is,
Jimmy,
on every down.
I agree. I think they're making it obvious. Connor, what do you think? I know that's a lot, but man, there's Texas A&M. I just think about the $84 million buyout. If they're crazy enough, if they were to be stupid enough to pay Jimbo Fisher, that's insanity. But
not happening.
Yeah, I don't think it's even in discussion. It's on message boards, but
No, that's not happening. And more likely, and where A&M goes from here, or where Jimbo Fisher is going to have to go from here, is getting somebody in there to call plays. I mean, it's as simple as that. Look, Urban Meyer figured that out at a certain point. He's like, all right, I got to get Dan Mullen in here to come to Florida to be my primary play caller at Florida. He did it at Ohio State too. He ends up bringing in Ryan Day, who is this offensive wonderkin, and you're able to figure some things out, and you're able to sustain your program's relevance. And Jimbo's stubborn, and the offense is too complicated right now, and it doesn't look like these receivers get any separation ever. And one of the problems right now that they're having with the Anaya Smith injury, and while he plays in the slot and Evan Stewart is more on the outside, is that Evan Stewart is forced now into pretty much getting number one matchups every single time on the outside. And that's not good. That's not good, because you're dealing with top corners like Emmanuel Forbes, who can shut down a guy like Evan Stewart, who, let's be honest, is going to be a great player probably, but at the same time, you can be a 5-star guy, but when you're 5'10", 170, getting separation on the outside against these more physical SEC corners is a really difficult thing. So A&M's got problems offensively. Jimbo hasn't had a top 30 passing offense since Jameis Winston left for the NFL. I don't see that happening anytime soon. They're going to have to bring in somebody to call some offensive plays next year.
Yeah, and you're right. Jimbo likes to be in control, and other coaches that don't do that, they go down with the ship, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that a lot with Gus. He goes back and forth with, he's going to bring in somebody to call plays. Now he's going to take it over again. It's like this back and forth thing, and it's tough. Look, I get it, because so many of these guys get to this level of success and they get these crazy buyouts because of who they are as an offensive mind.
Yeah.
And to all of a sudden tell yourself, oh, I need to change. I need to adapt. I need to be able to change what I've been doing. I think is tough. And I think so many of them struggle with that. And it's a very fine line to walk. And there are very few who can kind of find that right line. And I think Lane Kiffin and Josh Heupel have done a tremendous job at this. And here's what I mean by that. They are the CEO of their programs, but they're not the primary play callers anymore. That's the thing that we kind of get, that we lose sight of, because, Jeff Lebby was the primary play caller. Then he goes to Oklahoma. Lane Kiffin brings in Charlie Wise Jr. At Tennessee, Alex Golech is the primary play caller. Josh Heupel's the guy who oversees it. And they can kind of be the CEO of the offense and the CEO of the program and not necessarily have to worry about the minutia of calling plays, where Jimbo Fisher is still holding on to all those different play sheets and still trying to be the mastermind when he needs other things that he needs to be able to figure out.
Yeah. I mean, Connor, you just broke it down better than anybody. And that's the problem. At least you have somebody that you can throw overboard if things aren't going right.
Right.
I'm going to throw a name at you as a possibility to come back into the SEC as a head coach in the event there's an opening at any SEC school. Rhett Lashley, currently head coach at SMU.
I think that's interesting. And he would understand the dynamics at Auburn, right? You would think.
Never mind. I just thought I'd bring that one up. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Auburn is a very unique situation. It's the most unique job in college football for my money. I mean, it just is. And you need somebody in there that's going to understand the power dynamics and is going to be able to handle the ebbs and flows of that. And Brian Harsin might have been doomed from the jump, coming from where he came from, spending 21 of his previous 25 years in the state of Idaho. I think that's a little bit different than what he signed up for. And so, yeah, somebody like Rhett Lashley, who doesn't get enough credit for modernizing that Miami offense, which had been really stale for a long time, and what he was able to do to come in and bring in those modern spread concepts. Obviously, that would play well. That he'd be able to recruit. He's kind of a rising mind in the sport. Yeah. He'd be an interesting candidate. Who knows if Auburn's going to have splashier things in mind. I don't think Deion Sanders touches that job with a 10-foot pole, given the way that he likes to operate. But that's also a name that's going to be thrown out there. Hugh Freeze is going to be another name that's thrown out there, of course. But Rhett Lashley is definitely really interesting. Okay.
Connor, I know you've got to get off to a meeting. Tell people real quick how they can follow you. We got about 10 seconds.
Yeah. SaturdayDownSouth.com. One-stop shop for all college sports fans. At SatDownSouth on Twitter. At CJ O'Gara on Twitter.
Hey, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to having you on next week. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
Okay. All right. We'll take a quick break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back here with you. Great segment there. Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. Great big picture breakdown of what is going on with some of the coaching observations. I think really is Jimbo Fisher. That's the takeaway there. He is very hard-headed about, I'm going to call the offense. I've got all these old play sheets. You better get somebody in there. You got to have some new ideas. I mean, that's what it boils down to. But we are broadcasting live from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas, open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Service department on Saturdays is open 7:30 a.m. to 12:30 with 25 service bays. They're easy to work with. They're quick. They're conscious of time. They stay on time like we do in this show. We have to hit brakes and yes, when they got a hard out, we got to make sure we're on schedule. That's what they do. They're great to work with. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Get online, look at what they have. Over 700 used cars, trucks, and SUVs, and they will deliver. You see those 18-wheelers pulling all those cars and trucks. That's what they do. They'll deliver anywhere you are. It's worth it. Get online, redriverfordtoyota.com. And also great sponsors like Gateway Tire and Service Center. We go the distance for our customers and the communities where we do business. Jimmy, no way they're going to get rid of Jimbo Fisher. I mean, again, Texas A&M, one of the things about having more money than anybody else is you got a lot of stupid money and a lot of dead money. You get rid of a guy with an $84 million buyout. You are right there all by yourself, that old character on Hee Haw that would sit over in the corner with a dunce cap on. So that ain't going to happen. But I'm with him. It took out Gus Malzahn. He would bring somebody in, wouldn't let him coach. Let's be honest. Urban Meyer was smart enough to bring in Cousin Eddie. That worked well for him. Who would Jimbo Fisher work well with, in your humble opinion? We got a couple of minutes before Doug Dean and Frank Duffy join us, but let's kind of do a little quick rapid fire. I got a couple of more questions to ask you.
I don't think it matters because he's not going to let anybody.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So,
I like that answer. That's about the best answer. That I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, they're paying me $95 million, or at least they signed me to a $95 million extension this time last year. So, I'm going to do whatever I want to. You can have all the ideas you want to on who you might bring in, but all that matters is what I think.
Yeah, I mean,
they might need to use that NIL money to bring in some skill guys and develop some depth, because I'm shocked with the fact that they lose Anaya Smith and he's the key to their offense, but the fact there's really nothing of quality or somebody even close that can back him up really puts them in a huge bind.
The bottom line, I look around the SEC specifically, and I say, Kendall Browne's well-known name up at Arkansas. You look at Todd Monken at Georgia. Which of those two, Cliff Note version, let's do 30-second answers. I got several more. Which one, Kendall Browne or Todd Monken, is a head coach first?
I think it's Todd Monken because he's just more experienced. He's been a head coach before, and I think Kendall can still take his time and really pick the right job. Okay,
you like Todd Monken, correct? And he's got an NFL pedigree, correct?
Yeah, he's coached almost at every level.
Okay,
and again, he's seen it all, and I think, and he's older, so I think he would really. Maybe jump at a job, more than Kendall Browne would, because Kendall's very young.
Yeah. All right. Now, going back over to the ACC, we had yesterday, I know that you were doing missionary work in Sri Lanka, and we had issues with the phones, but I talked with Tommy Kane over in Atlanta on the ACC, and I think the ACC, they're in the same footprint basically as the SEC. Academically, 7 of those 14 schools are private universities. But I like what you said. We talked about that Wake Forest Clemson game. What Dave Clawson is doing with what he has to work with, not that they don't have money, it's just what will they spend on it. He's one of the better coaches in the country. And I go back to Al Grobe. He had success. They won the ACC at Wake Forest. Is that sustainable after Sam Hartman leaves?
Well, yeah, because Clawson has the offensive scheme that works no matter who the quarterback is. They were successful before Hartman came in. They put really big offensive numbers up, whereas with Grobe, he was more of a ground game, grinded out offensive philosophy type of coach. And every win there was a struggle. But with Clawson, they're able to attract players that want to come to a school where you get the ability to throw and catch it 50, 60 times a year. If you're good enough, you've got a legitimate shot to play in the NFL.
Yeah, and we thought Hartman was going to be out for a while this year. Luckily, he came back. All right, let's go over to Starkville. And I compare what they're doing at Mississippi State with the passing game, throwing 50 or 60 times in games, to what Miami did when Howard Schnellenberger was there. The little 3 and 4 yard short passes across the line of scrimmage to someone like Benny Blades, Alonzo Highsmith, Brett Perryman, whatever, and they're gone. 50, 60, 70 yard touchdown Hurricanes. They do the same thing, and they play some good defense. Is Mike Leach building a complete program versus just an air raid team?
Well, this season, it appears that he is, because they are trying to run the ball much more than they did. In fact, they've had a couple of games where they've been over the 100-yard mark in rushing, and a lot of people kind of laugh at that. But at Mississippi State, that's a big deal, because when you can get 100 yards rushing in a game, that keeps defensive coordinators from just basically rushing 3 and covering 8, because when you do run the ball, that means you got to have a minimum of 5 guys inside that box to just to match the number of linemen, that are blocking on running plays. So, I think that's a really big development when you consider the fact that, again, he's trying to, run the football. As a matter of fact, Dylan Johnson in this A&M game had 70 yards rushing himself.
Right.
And like I said, that is a big deal, and it's something that state opponents, they have to deal with now, and it's not something that they're used to, and it adds a different dynamic to what they're trying to do. And they had, in this game, they had 144 yards rushing, and I'm telling you what, that is so different than what we've seen with other Leach teams over the years.
It is. It really is. I hear that rumbling in the background. That could only be one of 3 people: Petunia, her aunt Mildred, or is it Doug Dean in Birmingham, the AU Dose? Doug Dean, commentary extraordinaire. How the hell are you this morning? And where's the Duff? I guess he's up there here he comes. He comes on the screen right now. But Doug,
the Duff, he is still recovering from his big hangover from the LSU victory, pulling with a little help from Auburn. I'm pulling victory from the jaws of defeat, but I'm not going to take anything away from LSU. They played like I bet Brian Kelly felt like they would have to get out of Jordan Harrell. But let me not get ahead of myself, but Stat Tiger was right and Stat Tiger was wrong. He told us Saturday morning through his computer, the keys, his computer model said 31-13, I believe, LSU. That was very believable. I was getting ridiculed with a 23-20 Auburn pick. And exactly that could have happened if we had an actual coaching staff. But credit to Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers. How are you, Duff?
Man, I'm doing great. It took me a full day to kind of recover when I got home. I did watch my Saints. I got back just in enough time in the fourth quarter to watch the double doink go off the upright, off the crossbar, lose another game. That was tough. I'm going to be in the Superdome this Sunday, trying to pull them in against a very pedestrian Seahawks team. If they go 1-4, season's done. But, it was an awesome weekend, brother. You took care of us, Doug. That was so much fun hanging out at the lake house with you and Rob and Audrey and your children. And it was just a blast. And, in fact, Ron had said, man, you look like you got some sun. I said, well, Rob and Doug and I hung out, and we caught some sun, sat on the dock, listened to some Hank Williams Jr., drank a few beers. She goes, from the look of how dark you are, you drank more than a couple beers. I said, oh, honey, and she goes, probably had a 12-pack. I said, honey, please don't say that. I'm an LSU fan. If I don't show up with at least a case, they're going to think I'm a fraud. So
Frank, if you need a
witness. So it was awesome, buddy. Thank you for your hospitality. I'm going on air and saying, if you ever get an invite to the Dean Palace on the lake for an Auburn game, you have got to go. It was an incredible weekend. Thank you for your hospitality, buddy.
My total pleasure, and it's our duty as Americans, right, and fellow SEC fans, to help refugees from Hurricane Ian And as we said on the show, I'm sorry to hijack your show, Rob, but we had Rob was going to bring his Bengal wine roll into the loveliest village for the festivities, and the gale force winds in Georgia made that an ill-advised move. So glad you were able to get over. And we were the winners, Duff, because I walk in my lake house that Duff had let himself in and already had gumbo started. That smell of Louisiana wafting through my lake house was just a beautiful thing. Had a great time with you.
I got to tell you, I was pretty proud of that gumbo. I've made some good ones. I put everything I had in that one. I threw the kitchen sink in that baby. I was making sure that was good.
Rob, take the show back over.
No, I'm just making sure of something. I will say this. We ate some of the best food.
We did. That tenderloin on
with a bunch of
Friday
ribs,
night.
we had tenderloin, we had your gumbo, and that is what we love about college football. But the one person or the one name that was not mentioned so far, a new favorite of mine is Milo the Vizsla. What a cool dog. And Bailey. I mean, just Delta, she let it be known like a small cottonmouth in a duck blind. You can see 6 grown men jump overboard in the water. Milo would give her a wide berth, as Audrey said, like, well, Milo, don't do anything. But man, Lake Martin, I got to say, Doug, the highlight was looking out on the island and seeing Mildred on the water ski, and that was pretty cool weekend right there.
One of Rob's many alter egos.
That's right. That's right.
Are we up for a break, or can we keep rolling here, Rob?
Oh man, keep going.
Okay, I want to say a couple of things. There are many games. Duff and Rob and Jimmy will know exactly what I refer to here. There are some of these big rivalry games that leading up to it, if you're a rabid fan at all, then you feel malice of forethought in your heart. You feel some sports hatred, hopefully never real hatred like you do. Unfortunately, you see at times when people lose their mind. This was one of those weird games for me, Duff, that was not the experience for me. It was about friendship and enjoying it. And now, don't get me wrong, I want Auburn to find a way to win, although that would have complicated the firing process, which I think is inevitable with one Brian Harsin. But I don't have it in me to root for my team to lose for something like that. But just completely delightful experience, start to finish. And we now know, and I've created a monster, that there is a Sidelines live studio at Lake Martin in Blue Creek. And if you give the coordinates, you will no longer be welcome there.
I'm gonna get Jimmy Sexton as my agent and make sure that's where I have to perform at.
Yeah. I knew from the time.
Well, Doug, to your point, look, LSU Auburn has always been a wonderful, friendly rivalry. It really has. It's always been good natured. I honestly can tell you, when we come to the loveliest village on the plain, everybody's in a great mood. I really think it's attributed to the fact that and I said this about 10 times on Saturday, we're flip sides of the same coin. So very similar, programs very similar, universities very similar. We have a hated conjoined enemy in Alabama. It's a fun time when we get together. And yes, we both want to win. And I have been in Tiger Stadium, and I've been in, on the plains where we've gone absolutely crazy when we have won, and we've been incredibly dejected when we haven't won. I stumbled out of there Les Miles' last game. Felt like somebody punched me in the stomach. But the cool thing is everyone gets along. The pregame was fantastic. I mean, how many times can you actually take a picture with a sitting United States senator where there's no Secret Service around and y'all are sitting there? Frankly, I don't know how the Secret Service let a guy in purple walk up holding a bottle of Woodford Reserve and a full glass of Browne to take a picture with all of us together. By the way, that is the difference between Republican senators and Democrat senators. Republican senators are bad enough to walk around without having the security detail. But it was just incredible, wonderful weather, great atmosphere. We hung out at your house, watched the Kentucky Ole Miss game. Then we went out to Lake Martin and sat at the bar out on the water, which was incredible.
Marina, I'll give them a shout out. And
the tents, I mean, it was just a great fun time. And I promise you, Doug Dean, and Rob and Audrey. You guys have cradle to grave service when y'all come back to Baton Rouge. I promise you. I don't know how I'm going to get Mike the Tiger to get in top hat and tails and do a tap dance for you. And I'm going to do everything in my power to do that.
Well,
Hey,
Rob, I'm sure you want to talk about the actual game.
not really.
And by the way, I'm not crowing because anytime your offense only puts up 75 yards of passing, you shut up and be quiet.
Well, let me say this to Doug.
Choose building something. Go ahead, Rob.
Give a shout out to Chuck's Marina there on Lake Martin. That place was so cool. You feel, I mean, I've been going to Lake Martin a long time, but I hadn't been in a while. It's like being at the beach down there. And Frank, you're right too. Second half, LSU wins a road game at night at Jordan Hare with 5 yards passing in the second half.
Total
Thank
yard.
goodness for Jane Daniels and his feet. And Stat Tiger even called that. Remember, Doug? Stat Tiger came on and said Auburn in the second half, has had problems, and you saw that kind of pass. I think Brian Harsin, Doug and I sat next to each other. We sat and watched the game together. Compliments of his hospitality, and we sat in the end zone, and we watched when Brian Harsin decided to do a 4th and 10 on a long pass.
Hold that thought, Frank. We got to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to be right back because I want you to expand on that because you're going to make some great points. I can feel it after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Browne back here with you, broadcasting from the Red River Ford Toyota studios in beautiful Wynne, Arkansas. Driving in from Parkin, Arkansas, everybody, it looked like we'd had a blizzard, a winter storm, the cotton in full bloom.
Oh, yeah.
It is absolutely, I mean, people pulling over on the side of the road, getting their pictures taken with it. They're cutting beans, they're cutting corn, they're cutting rice. Ducks are starting to pitch into, to any little pothole out there. It is a great time of year. I'm going to tell you something. Don't ever talk bad about farmers, but don't ever talk about bad farmers in a bad way with your mouth full. These people, hey, they don't clock in 9 to 5. Donnie Raines and Robert Hill and David Hill and Woodson Hill, all these farmers that I know, James Kelly out here, they work literally 18, 20 hours. And then they're back up. They got lights on those tractors, but they got DVD players and they got AM, FM stereo. I don't know if they have 8-track, but they got it pretty good.
Hey, if you ate today, you better thank a farmer and a rancher. And if you ate for peace today, you better thank a soldier.
Absolutely. So I always shout that out because our listeners, Frank and Jimmy and Doug, everybody, we are lucky. We can see, Nigel can see, we have listeners in 48 different countries. And I think they must be expats, military, but thank you for your service and what you do. And also, as Connor O'Gara said, if you want to help the people out in Florida, the Carolinas, they got hit by Hurricane Ian. I saw it at Walmart this morning. Tap on that. You can donate to the Red Cross. Red Cross, I believe, is a legitimate organization to give to, but they need a lot of help. But I'm going to tell you, I go back to Lake Martin, and I don't work for the Chamber of Commerce or anything, but that is an oasis. And just taking that back road, Doug, to get to Auburn, that is it's absolutely beautiful. And I tell you one thing I saw down there, a lot of horses. But let's no horseplay intended, but let's talk
Let's
about
break
that.
down the game, brother.
Let's talk about that Auburn offense. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic. Your thoughts on what does Auburn do, Doug? What can they do?
I'm going to go Stat Tiger, and I'm gonna try to be pithy here, as the great Bill O'Reilly used to ask. And I'm bad about being verbose, but the great Justin Ferguson, who covers Auburn, I want to give him proper credit and clicks at the Auburn Observer. Brought in a brilliant Stat Tiger would be proud to look at this. And Frank and I sitting in the south end zone, what was so cool is to be able to go enjoy a game analytically. We certainly cheered our fair share. Yeah. There was a furrowed brow a little bit on Frank's face at the outset. It wasn't supposed to go that way. And, like Jimmy,
did that show?
There was some doo-doo. I mean, all of a sudden Auburn acted like we had a quarterback that was serviceable. But, I had a feeling it was fool's gold and turned it to Duff when that scoop and score happened. The game was certainly still winnable for Auburn, but it was a gut punch to LSU's credit, and very alert of that player to just finish the play and say, let the referees figure out, was it a foul? Go ahead and get it in the end zone. But a stat I want to get to, Ferguson talks about what's called the middle eight. This is powerful, and it might help your wagering success, Duff, if you don't already use this. The middle eight is the last 4 minutes of the second quarter in any game and the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. And the great Bill Belichick, it's been documented, has built an entire game management theory around this middle eight. And the concept is, if you can find a way to either eat the ball, sustain a drive, that first or last 4 minutes of the second quarter, and keep your opponent on the bench. Imagine Peyton Manning. He doesn't get in there for those 4 minutes. Then you've got a long halftime. Then you've got another 4 minutes, like if you're getting the ball in the third. And by the time he gets back in, the rhythm is gone, and it's not the same offense.
Addition by subtraction.
Yeah, and so dig this. It should come as no surprise. We already know that after that scoop and score, LSU was smelling blood. Auburn was playing really good defense overall, Jaden Daniels, who came in with a 73% completion rate in this game, 8 of 20, that plummeted to 40%. If Stat Tiger knows that going into the game, he probably likes Auburn's shot. But then this was the backbreaker, and in LSU's favor. Jaden Daniels hits John Emery Jr. for a 39-yard shot down inside the Auburn 2 or 3. And then I called the play from the south end zone, run a boot there, and he scored. So that with 15 seconds to half, that was a backbreaker, making it 17-14 going to halftime with LSU getting the ball in the third. Now Auburn ends up getting a 3-and-out in the third, but the damage was done, and then it became one of those field position games. But here's where you got to be worried. On this middle eight stat, Alabama, one of the gold standards this year, 34 scored, only 7 allowed in that 8 minutes by the Tide. Georgia, 41 scored, 6 allowed, so plus 27. LSU, you're doing some things right. 28 scored, 0 allowed. So LSU's playing some defense, and that should go well for where you're headed with what Frank calls the adult in the room, Brian Kelly. Now, Auburn, 7 scored, 42 allowed. Dead ass last on that middle eight statistic. Are you listening, Stat Tiger? There's your angle for this Auburn offense if they can figure that out.
That absolutely is telling. And you and I sat there, and we were absolutely shocked that they decided to throw on that fourth down. First of all, there were 3 mistakes on it by Harsin. Number one, you called a timeout, which, by the way, if you'd have had that timeout at the end of the game, you forced LSU to have one more first down. We couldn't run the ball out, right? Number two, you decided instead of punting. I mean, look, the great Pat Dye once said, a punt can be an awesome play, and it's exactly right. But why not go for the first on that 4th and 10? You had momentum. Why? And look, I wasn't opposed to y'all stretching the defense out. That was the smartest thing that Auburn did in the first quarter and a half. They got our defense back off the line of scrimmage. But that was the last play they needed to do that on 4th and 10.
100%.
And it gave LSU absolute momentum because, Doug, you and I were sitting there, and you said it to me. You said, you guys now have a 60-yard drive as opposed to a 90-yard drive, and had the time with 2 seconds left to get it into the end zone. The second thing I think he really screwed up on was Auburn was moving the ball on that drive when he called for the halfback pass. I get it. It could have caught LSU off guard, but there was no need for that. Y'all were moving the ball. That was probably Auburn's best drive since the first quarter. So I think Brian Harsin sometimes falls victim to the I want to be the smartest cat in the stadium. And I think he didn't need to do it. He just didn't. His team was playing for him. We said that. How impressive was Auburn coming out and playing for what could be a dead.
Well, he did something a lot of coaches do. He wanted to prove himself to be the smartest person in the room, and he didn't have to.
It's come out that he's got an analytics guy, and I'm not opposed to that. But if you're a slave of the analytics guy who's probably just a nerd who presented a PowerPoint that I can help you win games,
give him the $8 million.
Yeah. You'd like to have a coach that doesn't need an analytics guy, because I'll take y'all back to the Jimmy and Rob will remember, maybe Duff will, the 93 Iron Bowl. Alabama was playing for something big. Auburn was undefeated, Bowden's first year. Auburn was behind in the game, important detail. And Stan White, of all things, goes out with an ACL. Alabama's got a lead. Auburn ball at the Bama 35. That's no man's land. If you punt there, maybe you gain 15 yards of field position. 4th and 10, they send Patrick Nix in cold, didn't even warm up, and decide to take a chance, hurl a ball down to the 2-yard line. If it's intercepted, it's a good punt. If he doesn't catch it, it's not the end of the world. He catches it and scores. Yep. The difference in that game is knowing the moment. Auburn was behind in that game. We needed a momentum flip. In this game, you got a 17-14 lead, and you can make LSU go 90 yards, and where defense was playing, that was 100% of the time. That was the call to make when you consider that we don't have a go-to receiver that can win a 50-50 ball. And it's criminal war. It's a war crime, as someone wrote.
To quote my good friend Doug Dean in Section 16 on Saturday night about middle of the fourth quarter, you have to have situational acuity. You have to have awareness.
Coaches have to have that, not just players.
Yeah, good coaches are able to think when they're running. I mean, doing this live show, all kinds of stuff is happening around you. What you can't do is bang your knees into the desk and knock wires loose. And that's what coaches do when they take off running down the sidelines, rip their headsets out. They lose focus on what they're doing. Then they make a dumb play. You got to be grounded to be successful as a coach, but it's hard. Your game plan and everything is put in Monday, Friday. Saturday, as Coach Dye used to say, the hay's already in the barn, but don't play the game. Also, don't play that game Wednesday or Thursday. You cannot get too peaked up, but you've got to be prepared. Auburn and LSU are both second year for Auburn, first year with Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly just seems in control. And Harsin just seems stoic is what Brian Harsin seems to me. And it's almost as a lot of people say, a fait accompli on his part, where he's going, they don't want me here. I guess I need to get out of here. Who knows about all that stuff? What I hate is this state of mind among Auburn people in schools where they're struggling is, we're going to lose every game. I'm never going to pull for my school to lose because I want to get rid of a coach or bring in whatever. But there's a lot going on here. December signing period. You're seeing coaches. Carl Durrell, 0-5 at Colorado, had to go. Paul Christ at Wisconsin. Jimmy and I were talking last night, and he'll be on in a second with us about him. They had to get rid of him because they're terrible. But they renegotiated the buyout from 16.7 down to about.
Can't lose to your old coach. You can't do that.
But this December signing period is why everybody's pulling the trigger earlier in the season than they used to. And I don't know if it's going to be changed back at the coaches convention this year or not, but if you're Auburn and you're going to make a change, quit talking about it and just do it. And you hope that
you know.
Yeah.
And it did get a little more complicated on Saturday because y'all look actually better in a loss against LSU than in a win against Missouri. So it did a little bit complicated, but I think Auburn's first play is you've got to get that AD in place. That's the big thing. And I like Rob's choice at Utah State. I think the more I hear about him, the more I've read up on it, I think he's a great choice for you guys.
Yeah, I agree. He's a Citadel grad with Auburn blood who's looked and been coached and been an AD and in private business. I think he fits Auburn like Toomer's Oaks.
Rob, quickly, and I've been rude to Jimmy not getting him in here. Would love to hear what stood out to him, but I would be unfair, even though it was a losing effort. I put 80% of that on the head coach and some of his staff than I do the players. But my God, for against a stout LSU defense, for Auburn to roll up 438 yards of offense, a couple of those, if you want to call them flukes, you can do that. It won't hurt my feelings. To LSU's 237, but the backbreaker, 4 turnovers. And I was telling Duff as we walked out that what hurt the most was those 2 of those turnovers were compressed in the most critical waning minutes of the game when you just can't have that happen. And so, again, credit LSU, great teams that are starting to take on the personality of their coach and not panic. That's what I saw from LSU. I think Frank's smart enough to know this is an install year, if you will.
Yeah.
LSU fans would be smart not to judge it purely.
We're playing with house money right now. It's if we do well, great. If we don't, that's cool. It's building.
And he knows he's got to get, rebuild the roster with elite talent. But LSU is look out for LSU going forward.
Yeah. Jimmy,
Jimmy, what do you think? I want to get Jimmy's take. I would love to hear some trepidation and some concern over there in Tuscaloosa about what we're doing in Baton Rouge. I would love to hear that.
I know Munson here wants Auburn to keep Harsin and give him a lifetime contract.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that Missouri has retired the snag defeat from the Jaws of Victory trophy
2 weeks in a row.
That exhibition last week. Yeah, and then last week they break open a 70-yard run to the 1 foot line, and instead of just breaking out of the huddle, the sugar huddle, and running a quarterback sneak, on a quick snap count, they wait like 15 seconds before they snap the ball. And of course, you got to know that a team that jumped off sides twice on Auburn missed field goals, they would commit a false start unless you just get up to the line of scrimmage and snap the ball. So that cost them 4 points against Georgia. So, no, give Mizzou that trophy. It's retired forever after last week. And they made about 5 different strategic blunders to clinch it. But, again, though, with 85 yards passing, though, you're just not going to win many games in the Western Division of the SEC. You're just not. And, Kelly, in my mind, he's really one of the top 5 coaches in college football. And despite the fact they have no passing game, he is figuring out ways to win by just playing hard-nosed football and concentrating on Daniel's strength, which is obviously running with the football. But to have an NFL receiver, Kayshon Boutte, with 1 reception for 4 yards, it's just inconceivable. Their leading pass receiver is, Emory coming out of the backfield. They have absolutely no passing game. So it's going to be a tough slog for them. But you can already tell that Brian Kelly has totally transformed the mentality and the culture of the LSU football program.
No doubt.
And they are, without question, going in an upward trajectory. Auburn, well, McElroy mentioned it 2 or 3 times, the fact that they have an analytics guy on their staff. And obviously on those 2 different occasions, they deferred to him. And I do agree. I think Harsin is coaching like a guy that knows he's done, and
Agree.
he's just almost in a stupor out there. He's just he's just trying to, I don't know, just fly by the seat of his pants. It's just weird to see because with
Jimmy, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. Brian Hartson, I'll say this, looks like a guy that knows no matter what happens, he's going to get a $15 million check. So I don't know what he cares about, but that's a good observation. We're going to talk right after this 1 minute break. More Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Back here, a couple of more minutes with Doug Dean, AU Dose. Doug, you had a quick one for Jimmy because we got to get ready for Jordan Hill of 24/7 Sports to ask him what in the doggone world's going on in Athens. But
yeah, well, and I love how the four of us are cramming more content than the average show into a segment. So kudos to all my colleagues here. But dig this. I mean, like you can like it, or you can, as I do, you can find it to add to the fireable offenses to some degree with Brian Harsin, who's already gone. It's all about the PR choreography.
Semantics.
And I think Georgia will give Auburn an assist in that endeavor. But the offensive coordinator, former OC at Arizona State, Zach Hill, who's certainly got a pedigree, it's come out which is perfectly legit if Harsin wants to do it. But Harsin has been using Zach Hill as a consultant this whole season. I'm not talking about in the spring and summer. I'm talking about ongoing retainer basis to help figure out what should we be doing. Now, if that is right, and I trust the intel, imagine that Zach Hill helps with the first half or first quarter scripting, and it works. It's been working a couple of games in a row against good opponents, real good opponent Saturday night. And then you run out of the script. Do you think there's a correlation between not having the consultant build your playbook for you, and then all of a sudden you're on your own and you're doing really questionable, fundamentally flawed things as the game wears on?
Yeah, I think his cricket phone ran out of minutes.
Jimmy, did we set you off on that point?
Jimmy, we got about a minute and a half. Crickets.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was capped off by that. It looked like Laurel and Hardy trying to execute that halfback pass.
That was a killer.
At the end.
Help me, please.
That's what you call in tennis an unforced error.
That's a polite description.
Woo.
It was triggered, I promise you, by that fumbled first down.
Yeah.
Oh, golly. But I'll tell you, though, that is the guy. I mean, McElroy didn't mention him by name, but it's obviously Zach Hill, who was the analytics guy they brought on. And again, in the last 2 weeks, there's just been some horrible strategic decisions going forward on a fourth down. As a matter of fact, last week against Missouri, when they decided to go to 4th and 1 with the ball at the Missouri 29, all Auburn had to do was just act like they were going to kick a field goal, and Missouri would have jumped off sides and they would have got the first down.
There was a gun shy.
I mean, yeah. So it's just a complete mess, and you feel bad for the players, because they're working their butts off. They've gone through all these.
They played hard. Those kids played hard on Saturday night.
Hard.
Ashford fought his ass off.
Yeah,
they did.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm a little peeved at Zach Hill because he stole my gimmick. Because I went to Les Miles around 2006 and said, if you need somebody to watch the clock for you, I'm your guy. Anybody that gambles more than 3 games a weekend knows how to run out a clock. I couldn't get him to hire me. I'm happy for Zach.
Don't you love Looney Les Frank that on the field with Shelley Smith after that game? He goes, yeah, we had plenty of time. There were like 18 seconds left. They released the pass with like 6 seconds left, and they catch it in the end zone with 1 second left.
Just another Auburn LSU game, brother.
Hey, Duff, it's got to be said. All eyes on Death Valley this Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, those eyes won't be open unless we got a few Bloody Marys. It's going to be a tough one to get rolling. I wish we had those. I wish we had the Vols coming in at night, but we're just not that fortunate.
Hey, you guys are welcome at, as I call it, Camp Belsey, our place on Lake Martin, anytime early.
Thank you, brother. That was
beautiful,
awesome.
beautiful down there, man. This is great stuff. Thank you so much, Doug. And I know, you can't have enough close finishes in the Auburn LSU game. That's just every series is different. They're like restaurants. They just have the way they are, and that one was no different. And we may not see a worse LSU offense for another 50 years, or an Auburn offense like this for another 75.
Rob, if there's a third ring of hell for LSU fans, it's going to be showing the footage of this year's offense in correspondence to the 2019 offense on an endless loop in hell.
Yeah, I agree with you totally, man. I totally agree. Doug, thank you so much. Frank, are you going to be staying on? I know Doug's got to get to work, but we got Jordan Hill coming on with us right now, 24/7 Sports, covering Georgia.
See you, buddy. If you want me to hang, I'll hang.
Hang with us. And Doug, you're welcome to hang too if you can. I just know you have to get to work. But Jordan Hill is on with us right now. 24/7 Sports covers Georgia. And, Jordan, just when we had Lauren Smith on the show with us Friday, patriarch of Georgia and Southern football, along with David Housel and Buddy Martin and Haywood Harris and so many other great SIDs and media personalities. And I said, the way Georgia's playing, and I know they struggled against Kent State, you're going to be holding up in such rough places, desolate places as St. Simon's and Sea Island again next year, writing another book about a Georgia national championship. And little did I know it would take literally a full 60 for Georgia to go on the road and win at Missouri. But look, that's life in the SEC, and that's what these coaches talk about is you've got to be prepared, because we may look great on paper, but they don't play them on paper. It's how we match up on game day. But Missouri, Jimmy's right. They have retired the term snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. What do you say?
Yeah, I think it's a situation. I know Georgia fans, and I'm sure the players and the coaches too, if they could have had their choice and gone out and won that game 50-0, they would have taken it. But I think there's a lot of value in winning ugly sometimes. I think that, this team learned a lot about itself. I think Kirby, after the game, talking to him, he wasn't really mad. Wasn't a fire and brimstone kind of talk after the game. I mean, he said, these guys stuck together. These guys didn't panic. I think there's a lot of things they got to clean up, namely on the offensive line. Thought it was a very underwhelming performance there. But I think there's a lot of value in having games like this, particularly as strange as it may seem. We're still pretty early in this season. I think that Kirby and those guys learned a lot about each other. There was a good shot, I think that was in the first half, of Jamon Dumas-Johnson, one of those new starters on inside linebacker, getting into it, not really getting into it, but getting fired up on the sidelines, talking to his teammates. You could tell he was disappointed with how they were playing. And I think that you saw a lot of that from players, taking pride in what they do, taking pride in how they played. I think they were understood that they did not play to their standard. That's something that those players talk about all the time. But credit to those guys for not panicking, because, up in the press box, once Harrison Mevis, when he hit that 56-yarder, I'm sitting there thinking they're going to lose this game. I was really convinced at that point. And credit to, the offense for stepping up. And, Cedric Van Pran, the center, told us after the game, when you got to have it, you got to have it. And that's essentially what it boiled down to. Georgia had to make plays at the end, and to their credit, they did.
Kirby Smart always talks to his teams about being resilient and having composure. What did you see out of Georgia when the game was on the line in the fourth quarter that made you think, okay, this team's a lot like last year, or did you not see it?
Well, I think more than if you compare it to last year or not, it was just the fact they didn't panic. I mean, once they really had to start moving the ball, they did. Kenny McIntosh, who went into that game, was not 100%. He's bowling guys over. Dejon Edwards, a guy that I was really impressed with how he played 2 weeks ago against Kent State, ran really, really hard. I think it's easy to kind of forget after you see them win that game. There's a point in that fourth quarter. It's 4th and 1 on the Missouri 4. You don't get that, you probably lose the game. And they get the ball to Kenny McIntosh on a sweep, and he picks up the first down. I think it was just a situation where you didn't see panic. The defense really in that second half as a whole played really well, but even in that fourth quarter, they had almost no margin for error. You give up another long field goal, and Harrison Mevis for Missouri's kicking it from the logo and hitting it. So you do not have a lot of room that you can give up. Defense locked down. Defense made plays when they knew that probably any more points was going to be a loss. I think it was just a situation where those guys showed that they were up for the challenge. I'm sure practice this week has not been fun. I'm sure film study on Sunday or even Monday was probably ugly. Probably couldn't show that in front of the kids, some of the things that were said. But I think it's an opportunity for them to grow.
Yeah. Frank and Jimmy, I'll start with you, Frank. Is Auburn just what the doctor ordered? I mean, I've never seen it, not since February 30th of 1892, when Auburn was a 29.5-point underdog to anybody in school history. Yeah. I mean, hell, like we say, Shug Jordan's famous quote, David was a 40-point underdog to Goliath. And look how that turned out. But do you see Auburn taking down Georgia? I mean, I look, as an Auburn man, that would make me happy. I do this show. We talk with a lot of smart people like Jordan Hill and Lauren Smith, Tony Barnhart, Mark Schlaball that know Georgia's program really well. Do you see it?
Well, what I see is y'all are catching the dogs at a really bad time. I'm sure Claude had closed the curtains on what was going on in practice this week on Kirby's direction. I'm sure like they were having their hands handed to them. I love the rivalry. In fact, it's probably my favorite SEC rivalry outside of one that LSU is in, South's oldest. And I can't remember a time, and even though Georgia has had its way with Auburn recently, I can't remember a time that this rivalry is you going into the game is as one-sided. But the big problem is you've got Georgia's attention, and they're motivated. They've been hearing now for the last couple of weeks that y'all are not playing up to your standards. And look, let's face it, every championship run has a game like this in it. LSU's in 2019, we had the Auburn game. We barely got out of that game alive. You're going to have one of these. I'd like to know, what do you think is Kirby's takeaway from Missouri? What do you think he's telling them this week to get their attention, to get it back focused for play, which in the SEC is going to be becoming a lot tougher than the Missouri Tigers?
I think the situation that I would imagine Kirby's really harping on is just hold on to the football. I mean, that was the issue 2 weeks in a row. They started the year, those first 3 games, did not have a single turnover. And I was sure to mention that after the Samford game, I believe, and Kirby said, you jinxed us. And, well, maybe I did. It doesn't look like he was wrong on that.
Your
But
fault.
yes, exactly. I'm surprised I haven't seen more tweets at me about that. But, it's I think that's the biggest thing, because that is what has gotten Georgia in trouble the last couple of weeks. That Missouri game, early on the second possession, Kendall Milton breaks what I think still was Georgia's longest run of the game. And he fumbles at the end of it. 35-yard run goes for naught, and Missouri gets the ball. And then later on, there's a handoff, kind of a read situation between Stetson and Dejon Edwards. Ball comes out. It's just a situation where they have opened the door for teams to hang around. And I'm sure that's something Kirby's harped on. When you lose a turnover battle, you're giving, you're not only giving the ball to the other team, but you're giving up possessions. It's all about getting possessions, finishing drives. And if you're playing with fewer drives, you leave yourself vulnerable to getting beat. And, when they're playing Tennessee, when they're playing Mississippi State, when they're playing Kentucky, you can't afford that. And I'd have to imagine that's been a big point of emphasis this week, even if, Auburn is a big underdog. Missouri was last week, and they did pretty much everything but win that game.
Yeah. Interesting, Jordan. The Deep South's oldest rivalry started, February 20th, 1892, Piedmont Park, Atlanta, Georgia, Auburn 10, Georgia nothing. From 1950 to 2000, Auburn won the series in every decade. Mark Richt comes along in 2001. You look at it, 2000 to 2009, Georgia wins that decade 6-4. 2010 to 2019, remember they played twice in 2017. Georgia wins 8 of the 11. And so far in this decade, they're off to a 2-0 start. So in this millennium, Georgia leads the series with Auburn 16-7. Go back the last 40 years, Auburn and Alabama, it's 20-20. Auburn beats Alabama more than anybody, but now they've lost control of the Georgia series. They used to recruit Georgia really hard, but you don't see it anymore, not with this staff. I don't know what's going on. Does Georgia still consider Auburn to be a rival?
I think they do. I think it's a situation. And what's so funny with Georgia specifically is that with the state of Georgia, I think everybody's got a different favorite rival. I'm from North Georgia. I'm from not far from the Tennessee line. There's a lot of Tennessee fans. There's a lot of Tennessee fans. You go really throughout the state. I still think Florida's probably the biggest rival, but West Georgia, I've got friends out in Carrollton and out West Georgia. It's all
LaGrange, Columbus.
Exactly. Yeah. The Auburn rivalry means more. And then probably out near Augusta, there's probably fans that care more about, when they do play Clemson, and then obviously having South Carolina as well. Yeah. I'd say it's still a rivalry, but, Auburn definitely needs some life kind of shot into it when it comes to this rivalry. I mean, they have not beaten Georgia in Athens since 2005, and I don't want to make y'all feel old, but I was 11 years old the last time that happened.
Hey, let me add some more fuel to that fire. I think in the last 5 times Auburn's played in Athens, I think in the second half they've scored maybe 10 or 14 points. Yeah. And I'm saying this because I grew up, it was Alabama and Georgia, and then Tennessee and Florida. Now you throw LSU in there. For Auburn people, they're right on the state line with Georgia. And I worked in Columbus and TV my first 2 years out of Auburn, Jordan. And I mean, good God, it was Auburn was the school that we covered at Channel 3 in Columbus. We would send crews up to Georgia sometimes, but it is just amazing to me but again, you look at what was Steve Spurrier's record against Georgia, 11-1. And then the Zucker came in there. I remember Urban Meyer came in there, and I think Florida had beaten Georgia 18 of the last 20 games. But Georgia fans always considered Florida a rival, didn't they, during that time?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess it just makes it more frustrating. And I'm saying this because I just wish the people that ran Auburn football, the coaches, understood how much that game means to so many people. And because I've got a ton of respect for Georgia. And I just wish that Auburn would seemingly have more respect and understand, go recruit Georgia. That's your home away from home. It's like a de facto home state for Auburn. But this game Saturday, 29.5-point underdog, I just don't see Auburn going in there and saying, hey, thank you, sir, may I have another? I think it's going to be a typical, SEC rivalry game. But I still think Georgia's going to win. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to me when it comes to this year's game, I think if Auburn's going to have a chance, and I'm actually writing about this when we get off of the show, is Robbie Ashford. He's going to have to just play a pretty flawless game. He's got to move. But to
play well on Saturday.
To kind of, and to kind of, talk about his chances. I mean, Georgia kind of struggled to affect Chase Cook last week in that game against Missouri.
Yeah, hold those thoughts because I want you to expand on that. We're going to take a quick break, be right back with more on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Browne back with you from the Red River Forward Toyota Studios in Wynne, Arkansas. And I love House Industries, one of their slogans. We dig the smell of fresh dirt in the morning. Well, Jordan, you were making some great points, what you're going to be writing about, because you do put out a lot of great content. You're very active on social media. Very
great read.
Great stuff that you put out on Twitter. I know, Jimmy and Doug and Frank and all of us, we see it. And I like the little snippets that you do, 45 seconds, a minute and a half from press conferences. Kirby Smart's up, Nolan Smith is up, or whoever. We appreciate that. And we need that. That's what, honestly, we don't have the newspapers like we used to. You've got to get these little sound bites on there, like what you're doing. So,
when you're an SEC fan in Atlanta, you can't help but see it.
Yeah,
it's dogs 24/7, literally.
Yeah, but you really are, Jordan. It's much appreciated. Okay.
Absolutely, I appreciate that, guys.
Yeah, but you were making some points, and I think what you just said, Frank and Jimmy would agree. Georgia is so big now. Atlanta's 6.5 million, 22 counties. And in different parts of Georgia have bigger rivalries. I mean, I know growing up in Memphis, the Alabama game was obviously the big one for Auburn, but as a Tennessee native, if we lost to Tennessee, I came home to 50 or 60 oranges thrown in my driveway. I mean, that's just how it was. But
sound of banjos.
it was rough. But Jimmy, jump in here with some questions for Jordan Hill, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, well, I was a little concerned about the performance against Missouri because I felt from a mental standpoint that Missouri was really going to come into this game mentally damaged because it was almost impossible to lose that Auburn game the way that they did. And to know that the number one team in the country is coming to Como off a disappointing performance themselves against Kent State, I really thought Georgia was just going to come in there and steamroll. And I was just shocked to see it. And I wanted to get your response to this. After these last 2 weeks, and you look down the road, and I really think Auburn has a chance to, stay with Georgia for a while because I think physically, unlike Missouri, they can match up size-wise with Georgia, just from a physical smash mouth standpoint. And, I think this might not be a route like everybody thinks, but I'm looking down the road in this 4-game stretch of Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State, and Kentucky. Only one of those games is in Athens, and that's Tennessee. And I think you've got 4 straight opponents in the league that are having a really good years.
Yeah.
And I think
circled this game
where teams think that they're beaten before the opening kickoff. That is not going to be the case at all in that 4-game stretch.
Right.
And I think you could see some really interesting matchups during that stretch.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, that's going to be the stretch that determines if Georgia's going to be a playoff team this year or not. And the thing that I've kind of harped on even, before the season, you got to be healthy during that stretch. I mean, right now, looking at Saturday, doesn't sound like Jalen Carter, Georgia's arguably best player on either side of the ball, a guy that people think could be a top 5 NFL pick next April. It doesn't sound like he's going to play after getting hurt against Missouri. Still trying to get A.D. Mitchell, who is expected to be The top receiver, still trying to get him back. You know, they have to be healthy by the time they get to around Halloween, because these teams are really dangerous. We saw what, before the season, I circled the Mississippi State game and said I thought that was going to be Georgia's closest game. Being in Starkville, being late in the season, Mississippi State's coming off an 18-point win over Texas A&M. That team is dangerous. So, I mean, to me, that stretch,
and it wasn't that close.
Exactly. I mean, it was a blowout, and I think that is going to be key. If Georgia's truly going to be a playoff contender, they have to be healthy. And I can tell you right now, they cannot play like they did against Missouri Saturday, because there would be multiple losses during that stretch.
Jordan, you look at a team like Georgia with a lot of talent, lost a lot of guys, and Jimmy's right. Frank is making great points. They've still got these, Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida. And these teams, especially Tennessee and Kentucky, think that they're really good.
Yeah.
And
they want a shot at the king.
Yeah. And what you got to guard against is trying to sell insurance to someone who's never had an accident or a loss before can be difficult, especially if they've gone a long time without any problems. Trying to tell these guys, hey, you better be ready. This Auburn team is coming in. And a lot of these guys know each other from high school.
7-on-7s.
Yeah, and 7-on-7. So I think, again, I got a text from Manfred Mann down in Valdosta just now and said, look for Georgia to treat the Auburn game like the Samford game, just casually and polite. And I got another text from Ewell Gibbons in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Interesting. Says, look for Auburn's big rivals, Georgia and Alabama, if given the opportunity. If it's a complete domination and they know it, look for them to try to keep the score close, to make Auburn think Harson's the man and to keep him around. I mean, that's interesting stuff from Manfred Mann and Ewell Gibbons. Jordan, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen a few people on Twitter being like, "Hey, Auburn's right there. They should give this Bryan Harsin guy some more time."
Yeah, there you go.
Truthfully, I don't know if right now at the start of this week, I don't think Georgia covers the 27, 28 point. If it's something like that, I think in my head I'm thinking 34-10. I think that at the end of the day, Georgia's defensive line, I think, even without Jalen Carter, is going to be able to beat up on Auburn's offensive line, because, I covered Auburn. I still know a lot of people covering the team. And, I thought they played better last week on the line against LSU, but, it's a really rough offensive line. I think that Georgia, especially being in Sanford Stadium, I don't think it gets quite as loud as Jordan-Hare. Part of it's kind of open. I think that's sort of why it's not quite as loud. But, I think that Georgia's going to come out ready to play. But I don't think if that spreads somewhere around 4 touchdowns, which I haven't looked at it in the last few days, I don't think Georgia's quite going to cover that. I think Robbie Ashford can make a few plays here and there to give Auburn at least a little bit of life.
If you're a Georgia linebacker and you've got an Auburn pulling guard at 340 pounds coming at you, you ain't thinking about keeping Bryan Harsin stood up.
Yeah. Well, another thing too, Jordan. Something about Auburn, this team, these kids. The offensive coaching, it leaves a lot of question marks, but these kids wearing those Auburn jerseys, they have a lot of pride. They love Auburn. They love that school. And guys like Derek Hall, they're not going to let people in that locker room that aren't all in. But it's just the defense is playing their tails off, but the offensive play calling. I mean, you look at their plays. And you say, they're on a Post-it note on the fridge, get milk, eggs, and there's all 3 of our plays. What can Auburn do? It's not like they've been holding back. I mean, they played Penn State. And
they
LSU.
Played us tough, Rob. I'm telling you, those kids played for Harsin on Saturday night.
Oh yeah, no, they're playing for the brand. There's no doubt about it. And they've got my full support.
They're gonna give Georgia all they can. Yeah, might not be enough, but they're gonna give them all they can.
Yeah, and so Jordan, you look at Georgia in this game. Kirby's again going to be on them all week long. They got to win. What you got to be careful of is going, well, I don't care what coach says, man. We keep winning. We're Georgia. We're defending national champions. That's the danger. And the longer you let a stray dog hang around on the front porch, knowing this living out in the country, the more comfortable he gets. Not saying Auburn's a stray dog, but the underdog. Okay, that's what I'm saying. And you've got a very good read on both Georgia and Auburn, having covered Auburn for a long time. So you say 34-10. What would have to happen, short of, as Frank says, the majority of the Georgia team getting a positive virus test and not being able to only have 25 eligible players? What else would have to happen for Auburn to get the win? How convince me in 30 seconds how Auburn could get the W.
I think they would have to dominate a Georgia defensive line without Jalen Carter. I mean, I think that they can't rely solely on Robbie Ashford scrambling and throwing downfield and making plays. You know, he had a couple of those in that game against LSU, but then had a really costly fumble that LSU took back for a touchdown. They have got to, and I want to shout out the Auburn Observer's Justin Ferguson. He did a great story this morning.
Didn't he?
Talking about the middle 8, you know, the 4 minutes before halftime, 4 minutes after. Under Brian Harsin, Auburn has gotten decimated in the middle 8, and they can't afford to, you know, come out in the first half slow and come out and give up points at the end of the second half. And two, it's really simple. And I talked about it with Georgia last week of, you know, how Missouri hung around. Auburn can't turn the ball over. They have done a horrendous job creating turnovers, and they've given the ball away a bunch. If Auburn does not win the turnover battle, no chance that this is within 2 touchdowns, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm a subscriber to the Auburn Observer with Justin Ferguson, and just there's. I want to tell you what, folks. We don't have the newspapers that we used to, but we've got some really good writers like you, Justin Ferguson. They're just some outstanding ones, and I think you all dig deeper than people are giving you credit for. But I mean, let people know. I know you got a big day ahead of you, how they can follow you on Twitter and follow your content on 24/7.
Absolutely. On Twitter at Jordan, Jordan Davis Hill, and at Dogs247 on Twitter, and then Dogs247.com. So writing a lot of stuff this week. Got stories. Going to go talk to some more players tonight. And then Wednesday, don't forget, men's basketball is getting started. So the start of the Mike White era. I'm going to do a little bit of that, go out and watch practice and see what's going on there. But football is obviously the big focus, but plenty of other stuff getting started soon.
No, it is. And I tell you what, you need to sell a map of the state of Georgia to show Georgia fans rivalries. And I think that's pretty cool the way you broke it down today. I think that's great. But anyway, Jordan Hill, thanks so much for your time. Look forward to having you on Sidelines again next week. Have a great one.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
All right. You bet. That is, tell you what, Jimmy and Frank, that's a guy, you know, that is getting after it. He really does his homework. Met him at SEC Media Days.
Yeah,
there are a lot of these young, true grit journalism. They get after it, but man, he really is he's really active, and he fancies himself on making statements, comments, whatever, based on doing his homework.
Measured.
I think it really shows up. It's like when you have, I was told this by a friend of mine in the radio business several years ago. He said, your best guests typically, not always, but typically, majority of the time, are the writers, because they're thinking about what they're saying because they've already written it. You get a mechanical engineer like our good friend Maury Gaston on here. Maury measures every word he says. And, you know, CPAs and engineers, the old joke goes, they're not boring people. They're not. I know a lot of them, and I love them to death. They just get excited about what a lot of people consider to be boring things. But Maury and people like him, they're great technical writers. Maury would be a great columnist, as David Letterman used to call it, a column. But that you can tell that, like when Jimmy, you think and you think and you think. It's like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, you know, but people think about what they're saying because they've written it. That's how you learn, isn't it, guys?
Jimmy does it, and so did Doug. You know, when we did our show from Lake Martin on Friday, a lot of Doug's points were actually in his daily dose that he had finished and sent off that morning. We were sitting around having coffee at his house, and he sent off his report. A lot of those points were written. So to your point, Rob, you're exactly right.
Well, you know, you think about anytime, Jimmy, and we're waiting. Rodney or Tyler Insider should be joining us here momentarily. I know he's stuck in traffic, or he may be at Taco Casa getting a taco burger. But anyway, Jimmy, real quick, looking at it, as Jordan said, the state of Georgia, the population is just so massive now. It's not as big as Florida, but people there, again, they get into these regional rivalries, and depends on, again, what part of the state that you are in. Mm-hmm. Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider, is on with us right now. And Rodney, you took care of business on the road in Fayetteville, 49-26, getting ready. Texas A&M comes to town. Lord Fauntleroy, Jimbo Fisher, is coming, and he said, "I didn't buy this thing." Oh no,
he's gonna get his britches took down. Is what's gonna happen to little Lord Fauntleroy.
Well, let me tell you something, man. I remember an opposing coach one time in middle school basketball said, "Your son's a really good basketball player, but boy, we know how to get under his skin." And I said, "That's really not fair. He's a redheaded, blue-eyed Irish Catholic male. I mean, come on. I mean, he's going to get after you and play a full game." But think about it. Bryce Young was hurt in the game. So again, whatever you can tell us. Whatever's OTR, we totally understand and respect that. But by the way, I was in Tuscaloosa to see Waller and Susan, the great May family, May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport since 1964. I found another favorite place. Waller and I went there Saturday, went there again Sunday with my wife. Milo's Hamburgers. God, the Mexi burger.
You did get one. Well, stop. Oh, man, awesome.
We went to the drive-thru twice in Sylacauga. They got a new Milo's out on 280, but it was
y'all were talking about it.
Yeah, it was incredible. But Rodney, let's talk about it right now. There's a lot going on in Tuscaloosa, but never, ever a dull moment. Nick Saban's finding something to coach these guys up about, as Lord Fauntleroy and the red.
He's looking for a switch.
Yeah, he's something tells me he is excited about this matchup.
Well, I don't even think there's anything OTR to withhold, to be honest with you. I might tell you how excited he is, because they're not letting former players in for practices.
Oh my goodness!
Types of things this week. Of course, media doesn't get a viewing period anymore, which, okay, it's understandable. That's the way a lot of coaches handle it. But not even former players who are generally welcome to practice are in this week. So I think they're trying to keep the doors shut over there. And what Bryce Young, I think all we're going to hear all week is day to day. And then eventually it'll be a game time decision. Is what we're going to hear. There's some people telling me that he's going to play, but again, I don't put a lot of stock in that till I see him trot out on the field. We'll see. He seemed to be in good spirits on the sidelines later in the second half when he came out, as you saw. I know that he was tossing the ball around a little bit before the start of the third quarter. But, again, that's the big question. But not only has Alabama got a quarterback.
Rodney, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider's with us. Everybody listening out on Lake Martin, Chuck's Marina, all over the place. We'll be right back. Kicks 96.3 on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back here with you. Frank Duffy in the beautiful mountains of North Georgia. Golly, Helen, Georgia right now, I imagine they're about to wrap up Oktoberfest up there. But if you are looking for someplace fun to go,
great place.
18-piece oompa bands playing up there, beer steins, brats, kraut, schnitzel, man, yodeling contest. Helen, Georgia is a place to be.
Great place.
Right backyard. Jimmy Hodge in Knoxville, Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. It's only $48 a year in Tuscaloosa. If you want to be a Tider Insider, become a subscriber to Tider Insider. This man, 26 years. I know having him on the show here these last couple of years and counting, you learn a lot. He doesn't speak unless he's done his homework. Now, you're talking about the Alabama quarterback situation. If Bryce Young's good to go, if he's not good to go, talk about the play of his backup this past Saturday on the road in Fayetteville, because that's a quality win against a solid Arkansas team that's a couple of more recruiting classes away, I think, from being really good.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was going to say, too, that Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher's being a little bit coy. I didn't get that name that you're referring to him as, but he's being a little bit coy as well, with his quarterback situation, I think. So not really sure who – will Haynes King be the guy? I mean, is Max Johnson, is he injured? I mean, that's something that I think, could prevent him from playing. And then there's also some talk that even the freshman, Connor Wiegman, the five-star recruit, could see some action in this game, so that's a little bit of a mystery as well, heading in. But, as far as Milroe, we've said this on your show before, and I know a lot of people snickered and all this. It certainly wasn't coming from me, but it was coming from inside the football complex, that Jalen Milroe, the coaching staff, including Nick Saban, thought he was a Lamar Jackson type athlete. And I think we saw that on that 77-yard run, when he came out of the pocket. He also had another good scramble earlier in the game in the shadow of the goal line that got a first down. But, yeah, that run was pretty incredible. I mean, he's a guy that's at 6'2", 6'2.5", probably close to 220 rock-solid pounds.
Yeah.
It probably runs a 4.3, 840. Think about that. He's pretty elusive, pretty dangerous, obviously, with that speed. So he played really well. And I think, he's not the most polished passer. He didn't play in a polished high school passing system. They allowed him to use his athleticism, but he's determined. He's really determined to become a top-notch passer. I think that's what he wants to be. He does not want to rely on his feet. But, in that circumstance, Rob, I was saying, take off, take off. I was, before that play actually occurred, in a few previous series, I was like, he's going to have to use his athleticism. I know he wants to stay in the pocket and make reads and all of that, but when he has an opportunity, he's going to have to pull it down in this game. And when he did, I think we may look back at that later in the season and say, that may have been the key play of the whole year.
Yeah. And any smart quarterback knows no matter how fast he is, eventually he's going to run into Will Anderson, and it ain't going to be nice. And you got to think like that. But think about your long-term career. You may be able to do it when you're in middle school and high school, but at this level, Ben Troop, Florida Gator All-American, said it best. The NFL is a collision league. So, too, I must say, is the SEC. Not easy. You're going to shorten your career if you try to be a hero. Frank?
Well, I was going to say the SEC speed on defense is really what sets it apart from all the other conferences. You guys have people like Will Anderson flying around and laying a lumber, but they're doing it from side to side. You can't get lateral on them. Look, to coin the old phrase from the great comedy riff of Bill Cosby, the beatings will now begin. Let me tell you something. Nick Saban is known for not being animated before games. I will guarantee you he will be animated before this game, at halftime, on the sideline. He is going to do everything in his power to embarrass Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. It's coming. He might say it ain't coming, but anybody that watches SEC football knows that if he can hang 40 on them, he's going to do it. What do you see as the ways that Texas A&M can stop this onslaught that's coming? Because I'll tell you, I thought Arkansas was going to play better against that. Alabama was just way too strong for them, and I think they're going to be way stronger than Texas A&M. What do you see is going to be the way that Texas A&M can possibly stay with Alabama, which I don't think is going to happen?
Well, I think, it depends on, again, let's assume Bryce Young plays for a second. Then I think you play the same defense you played last year and see how it works. I mean, why not, Come after him like you did last year, see if the offensive line can handle it, see if Bryce can handle it, and go from there. I think that's where, if you can stop, slow down Alabama from scoring, then you have a chance. Because, look, I don't see A&M putting up many points on Alabama. Because the offense is really struggling. They don't even know who the quarterback is. They don't even know if they have a quarterback. So I think A&M's in a difficult situation in that regard. So I think that's what I would do defensively, is just see, hey, can they handle what we threw at them last year? We were pretty good at it. That we disrupted them enough. Can we do that this year? I'm going to be honest with you, and again, assuming here for a second that it's Bryce Young. I don't think they're going to be able to have that kind of success this year.
I agree.
I think the Alabama offensive line is better. I think they're better prepared than they were last year. I think Eric Wolford's doing an incredible job so far of kind of bringing them along in both as pass protectors and, in the run blocking. So I think Alabama's going to be better off there. Now, let's flip the switch and assume that it's going to be Jalen Milroe. Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of things. It's one thing to kind of be tossed into a game like that, which is very, very difficult, what he had to do. But I also think it's another thing, too, that when you have it all week long, you're carrying that mantle of you're going to be the guy that's going to have to play this game. It's not like adrenaline that kicks in when you're thrown into the middle of the game. So I think if he's the guy, then I think he's going to – how is he going to respond to that? I think A&M's going to do whatever they feel, stack the box, come after Milroe, make him prove that he can throw the ball, and then, hope for some turnovers. So you're asking me from the A&M perspective, how would you defend them? That's probably the way I would look to try to, have a chance.
Yeah. Jimmy?
Well, I'll say this. When you look back on the season, if it ends up with a championship, definitely the Milroe 77-yard run will go down probably as the biggest play of the season. And what was impressive about that is that Arkansas had been employing a spy on Milroe, and in this case, it was Bumper Poole. Yeah. And once he got past him, he reverse field, just made the great run. Although I was horrified to see from the 2-yard line that Bill O'Brien went Auburn and Missouri mode, called pass play, throwing the ball in the middle of the field where all the defenders are, and it was batted up, and what seemed like for 5 seconds.
Bear Bryant was spinning in his grave.
But then it turned out that it didn't matter because Arkansas was sprinting an 11th player onto the field from their bench, which means the poor guy was 15 yards offside, so it wouldn't have counted, but it was still a scary moment. And when you saw Nick Saban on the sideline, he was not happy with that play selection, so hopefully we've had an end of that. And then along with the Bryce Young escaping the blitz against Texas at the end, when the Ohio State transfer portal guy had a beat on him, and Bryce made the great escape move to run down there and put him in field goal range to win it. But again, though, guys, I think that leading up to Saturday, Saban is going to be in Teddy Roosevelt mode. Speak softly and carry a big stick.
Yep.
I think you're going to be in a situation like 2 years ago in Baton Rouge where he didn't say much, but they quietly went down there and laid the double nickel on the board at Tiger Stadium. And I think Saturday he may go a little bit beyond that and try to lay a six.
Yes, he will.
Just to leave.
24 is too little.
Well, if anything, he'll lay a taco burger from Taco Casa on him, and Rodney. And you've had one of those, but no, I, you know what? Lord Fauntleroy, if you've ever seen the movie, golly, was it Shrek or whatever? It was one of those little princely little fellows that just, I mean, there's something, the way his personality and just thinking, he is above reproach, and I think
little Farquhar.
Yeah. And so I do think I look for Alabama to really want to come out and, Nick Saban's not going to be suiting up, but he can send that message
Damn right.
And through his coaches. I know that before I would take a test when I was in school at Auburn, I'd get the call from my mother, and there was a routine that started with Crystal, the custom country breakfast, and it went from there. Have I ever given you any bad advice, Rob? I said, no, ma'am. She goes, that's right. No, you go do it, and I want to hear about it.
Our 50-point beatdown at the hands of Alabama the year after we won the national championship was directly related to the comments that came out in the video in the post game. I guarantee you that's what Nick Saban is focused on with this Jimbo stuff. And look, he's not going to tell you he is, and he's going to act like everything's business as usual. I'll guarantee you it's not in this game.
Yeah, Rodney.
What is that now? Say again, Rob.
He's just saying that those comments, made by Coach O in 2019 inspired, let's just say, Alabama and Nick Saban in 2020. And I think with what Nick Saban said and Jimbo Fisher and him having a war awards, I mean, that's common among coaches. They'll work it out, but you're always looking for an edge in competition. And I look for Alabama to explode and for Bryant Denny to empty. I hate to say it, but to empty early, at least for the students, to get over, to the parties and stuff. But maybe they'll stick around. But I know they got to play the game. It's not one on paper. But what is it about A&M that you've seen so far that inspires confidence that they go get the win here? I don't see much.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, I just think that from an Alabama perspective, they will use that, obviously, the things that have been said and the things that have happened to some extent. But also, I think not only that, clearly last season, that game, the way it went and the flooding of the field afterwards, the Alabama players haven't forgotten that. I mean, it's not that Texas A&M did that. It's the feeling that the players had experiencing it, if that makes sense.
It makes you sick.
So, yeah. So it's really not like saying, okay, we're going to get A&M back because of this. It's the feeling they had after that game that they're not going to forget. So I think that's what they'll be responding to. That's what they'll be playing off of this week, is, hey, we remember what happened last year. We went down there, we were heavy favorites. They were coming off a loss to Arkansas. Everyone was saying we're going to roll in here and dominate them. And, we got caught up in that. And then the feeling afterwards, let's not get caught in the trap this time. Let's stay focused. And that may lead to what Frank is saying, laying all those points on them. So that's really the way I kind of see, the Alabama players probably being prepared this week.
Well, Rodney, I think a big factor was the fact that Bama had climbed the mountain last year, erasing a big deficit to take a 7-point lead with like 4 minutes left. And then down the stretch, A&M scores on their 2 drives, and Bama did not do anything with their offensive possession, to put themselves in a position to win. And, Will Anderson was probably the most vocal about how upset he was with the defense's performance on the final 2 possessions. And so, I think you're going to see this team just really riding that disappointment into getting ready emotionally and physically just to play this game at a high level.
Let me say this too, Jimmy, and you guys know this. You have to be careful too. And I know Nick Saban knows how to kind of take that fine line. What I mean by that is, I don't think he wants this to become such an emotional thing that, you go out there, you sell out, you win the game big, and you forget that you got to go to Knoxville the following week.
Correct.
I mean, not that they're looking ahead necessarily to afterwards, but hey, let's not get too caught up in all of that. So because you got a lot of things in front of you.
That said, Rob, I'm putting my Papa's gumbo recipe on the Tide -24, and I can tell you, there hasn't been many times that I've enjoyed Alabama wins. I'm going to enjoy this one this weekend.
Rodney, look, we just got a couple of minutes to go, and you think about this. Here it is, week 6 in the SEC, and some of the wind chimes are blowing in the background. I don't know where that is, but anyway, Rodney, the crowd Saturday, Alabama fans, right now you're beating everybody with such ease, it seems. This is going to be what I think will be a maximum effort. I think the crowd will be there early. I think they'll be rowdy. I think it's going to be an incredible atmosphere. Rodney, look, as always, thank you so much for joining us every week. Let people know how they can follow you and subscribe.
Well, it's TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year, and you can get instant access with your credit card, or if you prefer, there is an address there to send a check. And that gives you all our premium information. It's a big recruiting weekend, guys, for Alabama. A lot of really top players coming in. So we'll have that update a little bit later in the week, a rundown of that. And then also our All Sports Forum, which is our community of Alabama fans. I can tell you, it never stops on TiderInsider.com.
No, it really doesn't. But again, great insight. And I'm looking for 45-10 is my score prediction. And I'm saying that because I think Texas A&M might get a defensive touchdown. I don't know if they'll score on offense. They may, but hadn't seen anything to this point. If a dog will bite, he'll do it when he's a pup. They would have beaten App State if they were really good. Jimmy, Frank, Doug, Jordan Hill, Connor O'Gara, Rodney Orr, all of our guests, thanks so much. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out, help people with the expectation to get nothing in return. Go to the Red Cross if you want to help the people in Florida and the Carolinas in the path of the hurricane. We'll see you tomorrow. Sidelines.live. We are out of here.
Go Tigers.